Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and get it started. My name is Michael Crean. I'm the CEO and founder of Solutions Granted. We're going to focus on a few new things today, maybe talk about some new strategies, just how we should be looking at cybersecurity and how we're protecting the endpoint, and really what is that endpoint as we define it today in this new modern workplace. So first of all, we'd like to get started, and we're going to talk just a little bit about responsibility. I tend to break this down in a couple different ways. The first one I've done is I've always gone out to Google and looked at it, and Google comes back with the first definition of responsibility as the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something. Well, some people can look at that and say, you have to do something, or some people can look at that and say, I get the opportunity. I tend to look at that as an opportunity, not as a begrudging fact. For 9 years of my life, I had that opportunity that I willingly volunteered to be a part of the United States Army. And that was one of the greatest responsibilities I've ever had in my life. For all of my military veterans that are joining me here today, I'd like to thank you for your service. If we were doing this live and I could see everybody, I'd ask everybody to stand up and we'd give you a round of applause, because it is because of you that we get to enjoy the freedoms that we have today. The second one is the state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. We've all been there. We've all had those moments and opportunities where we didn't even know we were responsible for it, but somebody was going to blame us anyhow. And I could probably look around the room if we were all there and we'd all raise our hands and smile and nod and say, yep, that's happened to me. Not a very comfortable place to be, but it's an honor when you think about it. People are looking at you for that responsibility because they want you to lead. They want you to be accountable. They want you to take on that responsibility that they're hoping you're going to be there for them. What we really want, though, is we really want everybody to be in this ecosystem, in this place where we're able to act independently or without authorization, because we know that what's happening there is that people are looking for us to do the right thing when no one is watching. That's what we're really looking for. Unlike my 10-year-old son, that given the opportunity, if I'm in the room, he will always do the right thing. He will never do it wrong. It's that moment when no one is watching. What is he going to do? Is he going to act with that independent decision making and hopefully make those right decisions and not take too much authorization that wasn't given to him? Where we're going with this is, what can we provide you at Solutions Granted? What we can really provide to you is we have this ability to be your cybersecurity warriors, to be the individuals that are there to fight for you when you're sleeping at night, awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. These are not moments where we're calling somebody. These are live, actionable analysts and threat hunters that are awake, eyes on glass, looking at this. And it's not enough just to have the ability. You have to choose to do something with it. And what we choose to do is respond. We choose to pick up that phone and call you when we need to wake you up so that you can be a part of that action and part of that team and enjoy this responsibility with us of saving your clients and making sure that it doesn't turn into a really bad day. Or we're calling you to make you aware that we've already taken all of the actions. We've done everything that we can. Now we need to bring you up to speed because there are some actions that you need to take on your own. Everybody asks me all the time, what is the goal of security? Well, at the end of the day, the goal of security is to stop everything, to not let anything happen, but to get to it at a very, very fast pace and get there before it causes a devastating effect. Unfortunately, what we see in security today is it's not happening quite that easily. The goal of security is not being met. So my son, and I refer to him quite often, for the first couple years that he played hockey, he was a goalie. And you look at those guys, you look at those girls that are goalies, they have to be right 100% of the time, because the moment they're not right, somebody scores. That is our job. Our job is a defensive in nature game. We are trying to be right 100% of the time in that goal of security to get to that 0 day so that these breaches or these incidents or these events don't carry on. They say the average event carries on for about 300 days. Now, if those numbers are true, and we got that out of the IBM data report, you look at this data graph that we have here in days to detect. If that incident goes on for 100 days. It will cost you and your client potentially $200,000. We see the average cybersecurity policy for the small to medium businesses out there at about $100,000. So where is the additional $100,000 coming from? It's going to come in the form of credit cards. It's going to be a loan. It's going to be the rainy day fund. Don't be penny wise, pound foolish. Make sure your clients understand. In this goal, we all have responsibility. We all have to do our part. Had a new partner signing up with us about a month ago, a client had a breach. The client had been breached because they didn't have two-factor in 365. That partner had been staying awake multiple nights prior to getting on the phone with us, looking at the logs, trying to make sure that this event wasn't taking place again, doing all of that manual intervention. That man cared more about that company's security than what they did. And here's why I make that statement. As we got through the conversation and we were talking and we realized that they had been breached and that they had gotten over the hump and everything was fine, we came to the understanding that it was a set of credentials that were compromised, the account had been taken over, and no two-factor authentication. My simple comment back to him was, well, the customer obviously has that employed right now and it's done, right? Shook his head no, lowered his head, said, no, sorry, they won't allow me to do it. I was shocked. They don't care about their security as much as this man that they had hired to help them with their security. And yet it is their data. They didn't understand how much their data was worth. Therefore, they weren't allowed or willing to allow that additional 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds at most, to go ahead and put that two-factor in. And if you're doing it right and you're using a technology that uses a push, it'll send you that notification to your phone and you either have to click no or yes. That may take you an extra 2 to 3 seconds. These type of things will help impact and do that part that we all have to do together. So we see that I call this the basic security fundamentals and getting it right. The reason I bring this triangle up is because it is the strongest geometric shape. Scientifically proven, we all know it, it's out there. So how can we use this fundamental to talk about cybersecurity and what it really means? And when I say basic security fundamentals, I'm not talking about maybe what you thought is the basic building blocks. I'm talking about how I define what the basic security fundamentals are today. And I've got it broken down around this triangle, but you'll see at the bottom of this, I'm talking about our next Gen MDR, which is a managed detection and response technology of services. At the top of the triangle, we're talking about 365 log monitoring and email security. It's broken down into these two functional areas, and I want everybody to think about this for a moment. We all really understand how we identify an endpoint and what we do on that endpoint. We know that we create proper administrative access to a machine. We do our patch management. We put firewalls in front of it. We use a next gen AV or we use a standard AV. We use an EDR. We use an MDR. We've got all of these different technologies. We've got vulnerability assistance and management. We're doing all of these things on the endpoint where the end user's at, because obviously that's where all the attacks are coming. But we need to think about 365, and no slight to G Suite. But as I look at our partner ecosystem and I see everything that's going on out there, I'd say 95% of our partners' clients are running in 365. So everything that we do in 365, we can do in G Suite. We just talk about 365 a little bit more because that's where the lion's share, if we see most of corporate America at today. Stop thinking about 365 as a SaaS solution. Stop thinking about it just like email. There's this really intuitive article written by a gentleman by the name of Josh Lieberman. And it was kind of an aha moment for me. It's things that I had been thinking about, but he worded it so well and he talked about it. Don't treat 365 like that SaaS solution or that cloud application. Think about it like an endpoint. If you just change the thought behind what you're doing, you will secure it differently and you will think about it differently. And I say we should do this because 365 is not just email anymore. How many people have their clients using Azure AD or OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint? That new modern office looks an awful lot like things are no longer inside of that brick and mortar location. And oh yeah, by the way, let's not forget that we've also got our email out there. So when you think about it the next time, think about how you're going to secure 365. You would look at logs on a server. Why would you not look at the logs on 365? Microsoft is not doing a good job when it comes to the phishing and the spear phishing, and hence ATP has come into this scenario here. But there's more to it than that. You want to make sure you understand when new accounts are created. You want to make sure you understand when somebody sets up an out of domain forwarding rule. You want to make sure you understand when somebody turns off two-factor and doesn't turn it back on. Start thinking about it like it's an endpoint, and we will all become more successful together as we get there. So, I think everybody's heard it. Email's the number one threat vector, continues to be. It is unfortunately a pain in my existence. And most every time the breaches that we find, it is because an account was taken over. Somebody didn't have two-factor turned on. They had a weak password in place. And unfortunately, what we are finding more often than not is it's not necessarily always the employees, but it's the executives of the organizations. They don't want to lead from the front. It is too inconvenient for them. We have to get them to understand leaders don't lead from behind, they lead from the front. If we want our employees to do something, if we want our clients to do something, we should be doing it first. We have to show them through good example, just like our children. If any of you have any kids or any of you raising them, they will imitate just about every single thing that you do. So sometimes I have to be a little careful with the things that I say, because all of you that know me well enough know that I have a very colorful vocabulary. So I have to be careful what I'm saying in front of my son, because that little toucan is going to repeat just about everything that comes out of my mouth. The same thing when it comes to your clients. If you're knowing that this is the right thing to do, that you're going to do two-factor for yourself, you're going to add a different layer of protection to help protect against those account takeovers. Stop the phishing attempts. Look for that malware. And here's a really cool fact about malware. On most breaches, only 50% of them involve malware. Most of these incidences, most of these breaches that we're dealing with today, only 50% of them are malware. It's a really big number to think about. So where is the rest of it coming from? These account takeovers, these phishing emails, these are all things that are causing these data leaks to happen. And we can stop this. It's not hard. It takes a little bit more thought. And that thought around treating it like it's a endpoint and not like it's a SaaS application. We were talking about 365 and we talk about it like mail, but let's think about all of those other things. Let's think about OneDrive. Let's think about SharePoint. Let's think about what's going on in G Suite. Let's think about Slack and Dropbox and Teams and Citrix ShareFile and Box. I hear it every day. Partners, clients are getting rid of their file servers and they're moving into one of these cloud apps. You have to be careful with where that data resides and who has access to it. And also think about, where is there a potential infection of malware that it might come from? Because now you look at things like they're coming from iOS devices, they're coming from Android devices, they're also coming from computers that are at their home, not even corporate computers. Because we see so many people struggling with two-factor. Man, how many of you are actually enforcing and mandating that your clients do some sort of conditional access, where you're using an Intune for an MDM, or you're setting up where you can only access these devices using a CASB solution, or that, again, talking about the MDM, what you can get with Intune, or doing something like IP restrictions. When you start doing those type of conditional accesses, you can really differentiate where that vulnerability is and how you can identify it. And it becomes incredibly defensible when or if a problem happens. Look, if the nation state of whatever wants to attack one of your customers, it's going to happen. What we all have to do is to do the right things, find a framework that we can align ourselves with, and do things that are incredibly defensible. I'm not looking for any of us to be guilty before proven innocent. What I'm saying is, if we do the right things when no one is looking, the chances are we can survive the attack a little bit faster. We all hear the alphabet soup of what goes on when it comes to this industry that we're in. I thought the military is bad with their acronyms. When you look at what's happening in the IT world and you see all of the acronyms that are out there, and right now you've got your next Gen AV, you've got EDR, you've got MDR, you've got XDR. But I want to focus on MDR at the moment. This is a great thing that I found that came out of Gartner Peer Insights. I'm not a big fan of Gartner. Feel like they're a little bit too much pay to play, but they do have some good information occasionally. And this was a good one. Everybody that's looking for and clamoring to get that MDR to do a better job at detecting and responding to and managing those endpoints You see a lot of point providers. They're bringing in one technology and they're not running 24/7. They don't have a lot of human beings behind the scene. There's a lot of automation and there's a lot of insight on the systems that are making decisions and sending you an event notification. But how many of you are going to be awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or wake up every time that little device that we all carry around with us dings to tell you that there's another email? It is not actionable. You can't scale that way. So when you're looking at an MDR provider, make sure they are 24/7, not on call, truly live staffed human beings like Solutions Granted, where we're always there, we're always awake, and we're not just calling people, but also make sure it's a combination of technologies that they're bringing to the table that's helping with some of those advanced analytics, but the human expertise cannot be overlooked. Machines are great. They can help us with an awful lot of things, but at the end of the day, if we're not reliant on the humans to make that final decision, then we're starting to lose the fight and we're having far more false positives than we really should. So look at this definition, see how it resonates for how you're establishing your strategy, and think about it. And if it resonates with you, what I'm saying, maybe we should have a conversation. What is the Solutions Granted MDR difference? Well, first of all, we don't hide the stack that we're using. Everybody knows it. We are the Cylance guys and gals. We are the largest Cylance MSSP in the world. We are closing in on almost 160,000 endpoints of Cylance that we are managing and or co-managing with our partners today. It's an awful lot of endpoints that we see a lot and we know a lot because there's a lot coming at us. We're also using this other amazing technology that comes from a company by the name of InfoSight. For all of my historically tier 3 partners or tier 2 partners, you've heard us talking about InfoSight and you've heard us talking about our active ready response. One of the really cool things that we've worked on recently to differentiate our MDR is we started looking at how do we turn that real-time scanning engine on? But more importantly, how do we leverage down some of those rule sets aligned with MITRE ATT&CK, where we're looking for things that aren't just about the file? There was a email that we had sent out to all of our install base a couple months ago talking about the Hive print nightmare, serious SAM issue. And there was no patch for it. It's like, okay, we've got some great information from Microsoft. Let's go ahead and tell it to everybody and let them know, delete your file shadow copies, reset your permissions, re-enable your file shadow copies. Well, we happen to have a few of our partners already on the MDR offering, and we saw a mass file shadow copy deletion event happening at one of our partners' customers. And it was a major call to us that, hey, there's something going on here. We weren't even thinking about the email that we had just sent out a couple of days ago. We picked up the phone, called them. Hey, we're seeing some anomalistic behavior. We think there's something going on with the client. Is there anything that we should know about right now? And the answer was, yeah, quickly, we're following your guidance and discussion. Like, awesome, great, thank you. Got an email from somebody in one of the user groups where this particular partner happened to be a part of and told that story and had this conversation with them yesterday. And that's how we know that they're always there. They're always looking and they're alive. That bottom logo is our XDR platform. It's where we're ingesting all of these logs. It's where we're bringing them in. So those guys sitting behind those monitors in that dark room, looking at those screens, can do the human assistance that is necessary. And that's how we designed and developed our MDR difference so that we could threat hunt, we could do the analysis, we could retain the logs, and we could take remediation. I want to talk about remediation for a moment. We get a lot of this question is like, you're going to take care of everything. It's like, well, unfortunately, that's not really true. Nobody can take care of everything. So I've come up with 2 simple ways to look at this. In every event, there is a cause and an effect. The cause is a bad firewall policy. The cause is a lack of a patch. The cause is credentials being leaked out, being taken advantage of. The effect are what happens from there, what the threat actor starts to do. The effect is all on us. We are responsible for the effect. We need you to partner with us so that we can help guide you so that you can take care of the cause. We can't stop those credentials from being leaked from a bad password policy. We can't stop the credentials from being used because there's no 2-factor. We can't stop you from getting a forward-facing RDP. And trust me, I probably see there's some heads out there shaking and people are saying there's no way. Yes, there is a way. Several weeks ago, MSP had a problem. Come to find out, they had been compromised. Their credentials had been taken. There was no two-factor coming into their environment. And worse yet, they were storing the usernames and passwords for the cloud applications that they were accessing in the browser. Can I please remind everybody, really not a good thing to do. Please do not store credentials in the browser. If you want something to do password management for you, use something like LastPass. Not saying it's the only one out there, but it's a really good one and it does a great job. It contains it, it secures it, and you can even set it up to make sure that it is logging you out with some sort of regularity so that you just don't let it logged in. And those are best practices. Also, one housekeeping reminder thing here is Microsoft has been saying this for years. Do not use your user account as an administrator account. I know it sounds silly, and I know a lot of people are saying nobody's doing that. I will tell you, point in fact, a breach happened today, and I'm going to call it a breach because that's what this one was. And unfortunately, the credentials that were used were the user account for the individual that was also a domain admin. Really bad idea, should not be done ever. So we talked about, having those logs come into that SIM, into that SOC. 90% of what we receive, honestly, is trash. And we have to have a very intelligent platform that helps us. This is being done for what we're doing in 365. This is being done for what we're gathering out of machines, out of the environments that your customers are in, the firewalls, the domain controllers, the servers, the switches, the endpoints, all of these devices that we're aggregating logs and bringing these events in. We're getting billions, and I mean billions with a B, of events every day. So this system makes it very effective for us to be able to aggregate all of this stuff, get it out of our way, so then we can get that machine learning, that AI to go through that additional 10% to find out what is really going to be classified as good, what is not, and then the SOC analysts have that opportunity to then do their job. I think you can see where this is following along with some of what we're seeing in the definition of an MDR that we were reading from Gartner earlier. So it's really important. A SOC analyst is not a machine. It is a real human being. It is somebody that is trained, somebody that understands and can look at the anomalistic behavior and start piecing different pieces of this information together so that they can start looking at and what really needs to be reported to the customer and take action. So always trying to bring a little bit of education to the table when we're talking about this, not just what is Solutions Granted doing, but some things that everybody can look into and how they can make it better for themselves. Remember, there's this amazing organization out there, and it's the CIS, and they've got these controls. And if we really take the first few of these controls, they make a massive impact on what really can pay off in that client's environment. So we typically look at the first 6. Not saying that any one is more important than the other, but I think that maybe these are. We talk about the inventory and control of hardware assets. Well, how many of you are using an RMM tool? How many of you have those agents installed on those machines out there today? You already have an amazing inventory started. It probably takes care of about 90% of what's going on in most of your clients' environments. Where does that other 10% come from? Switches, printers, potentially routers, wireless access points, maybe some IoT things, but those are things that are very easy to manage. You can supplement what the RMM tool is giving you and bring the rest of it in. And now you have a great idea of what's sitting in your environment and where it's at. Coming back to that inventory idea, inventory and control around software assets. Your RMM tool is really giving you almost all of it. It will tell you every single piece of software that's installed on every single one of these machines. And then you've got some other software assets because all of that hardware that you're looking at, especially in firewalls and switches, they are running a firmware. They are running an operating system. Those things have vulnerabilities in them as well. And so you have to keep up with those. I will give you a for instance story. We saw a particular firewall manufacturer earlier this year have a known vulnerability. They came out with the patch, they put it out there, they told everybody this was a critical, get it done. Months went by. And unfortunately, the community wasn't listening to them very well. Maybe they just had too many emails coming at them. Maybe they didn't think it was as critical, even though the emails called it critical. We saw that particular vendor come out with an email stating, if you do not update the firmware on your VPN appliances, you will get ransomed. This is the first time I've ever seen somebody say, if you don't update, you're going to get ransomed. It woke everybody up. I think it was a bold move. I think it was required. Unfortunately, people still didn't listen, and it did happen. Let's talk about vulnerability management for a moment. This is a big one. People get a little confused here as to what vulnerability management really is and isn't. Patch management is not vulnerability management. It can be misconstrued as such because it is mitigating vulnerabilities, but it is not managing the vulnerabilities. Vulnerability management is something like a Nessus, a Tenable, a Qualys, a Rapid7. These technologies are built to help us understand the vulnerabilities and define what that priority may be. Is it a low? Is it a medium? Is it a high? Is it a critical? We have a vulnerability management service that we can offer. Our service is a little bit different. You're not just buying a technology. Like everything else we do and everyone that is partnered with us, we don't just sell things. We bring a tool along with us. We're kind of like mechanics, or kind of like your surgeon. When you're going to the surgeon, you're going to the mechanic, you're not necessarily as interested in the tool as you are the outcome of what they're bringing to you. Yes, the tools that we use are important, but really the outcome of what we're trying to accomplish and the things that we're doing and how we're going to partner with you are far more important. So looking at that vulnerability management, think about things like iTunes. There's been well-known, well-documented critical vulnerabilities within iTunes. Zoom, and I can't tell you in the last year the number of critical vulnerabilities that have come out in Zoom. Doesn't mean Zoom is doing it wrong. Doesn't mean that they're coding poorly. Just means that they are becoming a much bigger target. Nobody patches for Zoom. And if you've got the typical user where the machine is telling them, hey, I've got an update for you. Do you want to do it now? And they click ignore, and they click ignore, and they click ignore. You need to have something that can bring that actionable intelligence to the table and demystify the problem. But more importantly, bring some of that contextual intelligence that allows that vulnerability management to tell you, yes, you do have this critical vulnerability. It rates very high on the scale. But hey, of the 3 things that it will take to weaponize and make that vulnerability go wild, you only have 1 of them. Okay, that elevates it a little bit. It takes it off the just my critical radar, but now makes it something that you want to take more and pay more attention to. Now, if it doesn't have any of them, what we would normally say, hey, try to get it done in the next 7 days. Don't let it lag. Don't drop everything you're doing, but get it done soonish. Now, if we come into you and we tell you, you have 3 of 3, what I would refer to that as a stop, drop, and roll moment, a 911, you might want to stop what you're doing because everything that's in there is right for it to go wild and become a much bigger problem. Obviously, administrative privileges, I talked about that a little bit ago. It is incredibly unfortunate how often we're seeing partners using their account as an administrative account, or only using a single administrative account into an environment that is a shared resource. Please stop doing that. Please stop using your user controls as administrative accounts. If you follow the Microsoft way, you're technically, every administrator is supposed to have 4 accounts. You're supposed to have a user account, you're supposed to have a workstation admin account, you're supposed to have a server admin account, and then you're supposed to have a domain admin account. It's a lot of accounts to have. I tend to lead on the side of maybe 4 is a little bit much, but 3 is practical. The user, the workstation, and a server admin account that also does domain admin. But if you really want to do it right, you should have 4. At a very, very minimum, you better have at least 2. Because when your user account gets compromised, because remember, that's where all the attacks are coming. They're coming at the user and they get onto your machine and they're able to extrapolate and get your password. You've given them the keys to the kingdom. They can run wild in the environment. Please stop doing that. Obviously, the secure configurations of hardware and software, stop taking the username and password that was built into a machine, change it. But from when I got out of the military and went to work as a government contractor and made my first entry into doing computer work, I learned very early on that one of the things that the NSA was saying is harden operating system, change the built-in username, that admin username, change it to something else. It makes it harder. So on your firewalls, change the username. On everything on your switches, change the username. You know, there's vulnerabilities out there that when you see people using SNMP, you'll see that get key is public and people leave it. Change it. Don't leave these configurations in default. Make some of these easiest changes. We go to that maintenance and monitoring and analysis of audit logs. Obviously, that is what we're doing in the MDR space. That's what we're doing when we're ingesting the 365 logs. That's what we're doing when we're ingesting your firewall logs or your server logs or other core and critical assets. They always say the watch pot never boils. Well, that's hopefully what we're providing here. If it starts to boil, we're there, we're seeing it, we're monitoring it, we've done the analysis, and we're stopping it from boiling over so it doesn't become a really bad day for you and your clients. Now, here's the big one that's shocking to me. If you do these and nobody thinks that it's going to be 100%, they claim, and they, not me, CIS claims that if you can implement these 6, you can reduce your threats by 85%. It's a big number. We're all chasing 100, but 100 never happens. It never really gets there. I mean, it's 100% that we'll all die. It's 100% that we're all going to pay taxes. And those are about the 2 things that I'll guarantee you today. But if we can start following some of these 6 easy actions, and again, don't worry about completing one before moving to the other. See where you're at. Do a good reflection on those 6 and where you're going and where you're coming from. You know, we'll take a little bit of time just to pat ourselves on the back, give you a little bit of who we are and where we're coming from. We have been a CRM Security 100 for the last 3 years. We've been on the global top 250. Obviously, in 2019, it was the top 200. And we were actually in 2018, one of the top 100s. This space is growing rapidly, but we have been on this list for 4 years now. When it was a top 100, when it was a top 200, and now for the past previous years, the top 250. We've been the Cylance MSSP Partner of the Year for the last 3 years. We have been around. We've gotten a few awards. It has nothing to do with my magnetic personality or my good looks, because we know none of that's going to get us any awards today. But we do a really good job of being an MSSP for the channel and helping our channel. I'm going to pause right there for a second, and I think we've got another question. Could we have a copy of the slides after this? Yes, Michael, we absolutely can. If anybody will send me an email, or I'm going to make it even a little bit easier for you. One of the things that we're trying to do to make this easy for everybody is, let's recap. So we talked about Cylance and the real-time scanning plus the SOC and how we get to that MDR. We talked about cloud security with the account takeover, with the URL protection and malware protection. We talked about how we're doing that's different than just email security, because remember, 365 isn't just about email anymore. Then we talk about that log monitoring that we do with 365 and G Suite and how we put our SOC services behind that. And then we talk about that internal managed vulnerability assessment. These are the 4 functional areas that we talked about today in this webinar. And so I wanted to bring that back. If you would like anything from us, you want to have a collaborative security discussion, you want to talk about your security posture, you want to collaborate about things that you've heard or technologies that you heard of, the Scan Me code, if you just pull up your phone, it will open up your map. It will not give you malware, but it will give you that opportunity to send a quick email to us. Thank you very much for coming along with this journey and being a part of this webinar with us today. And stay tuned for some exciting things that we've got going on next month for Cybersecurity Awareness Month.